Hello, everybody, and welcome back to part two of our rookie preview episode. Like I'd mentioned on the episode that dropped on Wednesday, we'll be splitting it into two parts and we'll be dropping this one here. So, this episode is going to have our running back rankings, our receiver rankings, our tight end rankings, a couple of our sleeper picks, as well as our ice cold hot takes. So, ready? Thank you for listening to episode number one. And here we go, episode number two. Hope you guys enjoy. And let's start things off with our running backs. Here we go.
Running backs. Okay, running backs. We got our consensus top five was. Let me scroll down here. Our first was Najee Harris from Alabama. Then number two was Travis Etienne from Clemson. Then Javonte Williams for UNC at number three. Kenneth Gainwell at number four. And then at number five, we had a tie of Chuba Hubbard, fellow Canadian there. So a little tip of the cap to him. And then and Michael Carter. We had tied at our five. Najee Harris, I think, was kind of a pretty big lock. I think all three of us had Najee as our number one, correct?
I actually had Etienne.
You had Etienne as your first. And then after that, I think is where it gets a little bit interesting. So maybe let's all just kind of pick our one guy we want to stand on. Obviously, Zach, you have your Najee as your first. Then Armin, you took Etienne at two as your number one, even though he was number two under consensus. And then I have Javonte ahead of Etienne as my three. So maybe I'll take care of him, and then we can kind of go from there. So consensus number one, Zach, you can take away Najee Harris first.
Sure thing. This dude is a Mack truck. He's 6'2", 230. This year, about 1,400 yards, 5.8 average, 26 TDs, and an impressive stat line for receiving as well. 43 receptions on 53 targets for 425 yards. The guy is tough to bring down. 962 yards after contact, good for third in the nation, and 69 broken tackles, good for second in the nation. He's not winning any foot races over his career. He's only had 25 runs over 20 yards. Going back to what I said about Giovanni Bernard, though, this is somebody that I think teams can have a lot of faith in as a pass blocker. Being good at pass blocking, it isn't sexy. It's not going to be on the top 10 plays. It's not going to be something that you see on trading cards, on or whatever, but it's going to allow you to stay on the field for all three downs as a young player. And that is what you need for fantasy goal. You want to be on the field as much as you can, and you want to contribute as much as you can. He can contribute in the run game, obviously pretty good average and yards for days, 26 touchdowns. But he can also contribute in the passing game, not only as a receiver, but as a pass protector. Somebody like Leonard Fournette, Rojo, those guys, they're great at what they do, but they can't protect in the pass game.
Yeah.
Or they can't catch out of the backfield. Najee can do both. Obviously, he's built for the goal line. So I think that's an added feather to his cap. He's going to be somebody that once they get down to the 5-yard line, it's not like, oh, damn it, here comes Fatso to sub me out. You can have faith that Harris is going to stay in the game and hammer that ball in. I think out of all the running backs this year, mind you, it's not a top flight group of RBs this year. I think he has the safest floor in any fantasy format, whether it's PPR or non-PPR, because he can contribute in the passing game and in the run game.
Yeah, I had a mark down. He's your true 3-down guy. Like he's pretty standard across the board. Like you said, whether it's half point, full point, standard leagues, I think you're locked and loaded with Najee there.
I in the one league that we're all together, I have the 1-1, and I'm leaning heavy towards Najee. Do I wish I had last year's running back class to pick one guy from? Absolutely, but this year, if it does end up being a running back, I think Harris is going to be one of those guys that I'm strongly considering. But with that said, after I looked into Javonte Williams, he's certainly somebody that has piqued my interest a little bit.
Yeah, I'm actively trying to get the 102 in that league currently because I have Javonte as my number 2 in the rankings. But I'll let Armin go with ETN first there. I know he's got him ranked his number 1. So we'll let him go first, and then I'll take a swing at Williams following there.
All right. So yeah, Etienne won over Harris. I don't have it. Like, it's pretty close there. Like, it was a hard time debating. And then, like, what we're talking about with Javonte Williams, he is really close in there too now to me. But I had to pick one, so I went with Etienne because of that explosiveness of his. He averages in his years at Clemson. 17, he had 7.2 yards per carry. 18, he had 8.1. 19, 7.8. 2020 was a bit of a down year, though, 5.4. And then you look at his receiving. Besides 2018, he averages over 10 yards per reception. So he's not just getting little dunk passes and not getting anything out of them. Like, he's actually getting yards out of it. So he can receive as well. Probably his weakness compared to Najee would be his pass blocking. But at the fantasy perspective of it, that's why I chose Etienne, is that explosive ability to put off those big plays, and he could have huge games, whereas Najee is probably going to be your consistent, more bell cow back than him.
Yeah, I did have noted down there about the pass blocking. I think unfortunately that might bring him out of that 3 down role unless it is guaranteed he's going to get the pass. But man, that breakaway speed is electric. Like, he is fast. Not too many guys are catching him from behind.
Yeah.
I compared Etienne to CJ2K. He's somebody that he's not hammering it in between the tackles. He's looking to get out there at all times. I think his upside is in the PPR formats. He hasn't had over 20 carries in a game since 2018. So even at the college level, they weren't giving him a heavy workload. So maybe he gets 8 or 10 rushes a game, 8 to 10 targets a game. Think maybe like Alvin Kamara, not like the talent of Kamara, but like the same role as Kamara.
That's what I was saying to Armin earlier today.
See, I actually, going off a little bit here, I comp Javonte Williams closer to Kamara than Etienne myself, to be honest.
That leads me in good to so I actually, when I was doing my rankings, I almost put Williams as my 101. I almost did. I thought maybe that's a bit of a reach, but I really, really like Javonte Williams. He is hard to bring down. The thing that everybody's talking about, his center of gravity. You can't take him down. Arms tackles are not taking him down. Like, his stat line here, 157 attempts for 1,140 yards, 19 scores for an average of 7.3 yards a carry. Like, the man is a truck, and you're not bringing him down. And he has the 3 down tools. He can catch the ball. He can run between the tackles, outside the tackles. He's 5'9", 212 pounds, and runs a 4.55. So he doesn't have electric speed, but he's pretty quick. So, I mean, like, yeah, Etienne is faster, but I think Williams has a well-rounded package. And some comps I threw around there, I heard so the one comp I saw was Melvin Gordon, just not as fast. But I saw on the industry, a lot of people were comparing him to Kareem Hunt, which, I mean, we can all remember Kareem Hunt's, a few times. Yeah, Kareem Hunt's rookie season. That was as good as you're going to get from most people are drafting him in like the 2nd round. Like, it was impressive. So I think if you're being comped to Melvin Gordon just a little bit slower, or a Kareem Hunt, both guys have had a significant fantasy relevance. I really like him. I got like a lot. So I did put him in my 2. I really almost put him at my 1. So I kind of see that top tier where it's the 1, 2, 3, and then that's where that tier break goes down. I know I think all 3 of us had Kenneth Gainwell as our number 4. Strong pass catcher. I would say he's probably the best pass catcher in this draft class. Like, I think by quite a bit. A little bit of smaller guy, but another guy coming from the Memphis, and I'm sure somebody's going to mention here, but when you look at who just came from Memphis and had a pretty, I would say, decent breakout season and is hopefully going to get a little bit better. Antonio Gibson, there's a reason Gibson only had so much work he did, and that was because of Kenneth Gainwell. So I think going into our 104, and that was a consensus 104, I think that tier break does happen at 1, 2, 3. That tier break is there. Then there's Kenneth Gainwell down in another tier below. But I think somebody that definitely could be interesting for guys to be looking at come draft season.
Yeah, Gainwell, he was recruited to Memphis to play receiver, so he does have that pedigree as a pass catcher. And when he moved to running back for the 19 season, yeah, like you said, there is a reason why Gibson didn't play running back his final year. Like Gibson played receiver for a lot of the 19 season, and it was because of Gainwell. The hard thing with the evaluation for Gainwell is say what you will about the decision. He looked at what he did in 19 and he said, as good as it's going to get.
Yeah.
It's only going to go down. Like,
Yeah.
I'm sitting this year out and I'm going to make the decision makers going to make their job a little bit harder.
All in or all out, essentially.
Yeah. But I mean, you take care of your body, like you look after yourself. It'd have been a real shame if he it was Marcus Lattimore, I think, a couple years ago out of South Carolina, blew his knee up right before the draft, and he never really had much of a NFL career. So
no.
For Kenneth Gainwell, that's probably smart. Few less miles on the tires, if you will. So
like Bryce Love from Stanford his senior year,
yeah,
you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like he just news he just got released today. So like, you know, you just sometimes you just risk that coming back to your senior year and it just doesn't work.
Well, Gainwell also came back heavier, but it sounds like more fast. Like he came back faster too to his pro day here.
I always find it interesting when guys put the off season weight on, because like there's a difference between like your bulking weight and your playing weight. Like we talk about that, like there's a difference. So you come into the season out of playing weights, and then all of a sudden season's rolling around and you're back to kind of that standard weight. So I'm interested to see, because I know there's one guy that I don't know if actually we had in our sleeper pick, but I know in our consensus he ended up being like our consensus 8th or 9th with Stevenson. He's a pretty big boy, and like they're talking about him trying to cut weight, put weight on, like the cut weight for the combine or their pro day, I guess. And but it's always interesting to see what your lifting weight, your off-season weight is, and then to your actual playing weight. Chubba Hubbard. I'm my name is Michael Carter. I think I've talked enough about the top 4. I don't think you too much about Michael Carter, but Chubba Hubbard, I know you guys want to take a couple swings at him.
So Chubba was once the RB1. Had he been drafted in 2019, he probably would have been RB1. And even if he would have sat out this year, probably could have been RB1. I don't think those 2019 numbers are a fluke. Okay, you don't put up those kind of numbers by fluke, right? Like you got to be good to put up those numbers. He had 1,300 yards after contact in 2019. I think he's being slept on a little bit. I think he could still have a really good career in the NFL here. Like he could be a good sleeper if he didn't make our top 5 here.
Yeah.
The one thing I will say about Chubba is in the summer with the BML movement, is really cool seeing him speak out against not only racism, but the somewhat implied racism that his own head coach was wearing a really right-wing conservative news station's t-shirt. And not only did he'd call out the coach, but he made it well known that he wasn't happy with how society's going. So like even if he's the crappiest running back out of this draft cycle, I think he's somebody that you want to see be successful.
Yeah. Not
only is he a Canadian, but he's also he's somebody that put morals above his career, I think.
Yeah, bigger than the sport. You know, we talked about that a little bit with Alex Smith, where it becomes more than football, and obviously a prime example of that. Wide receivers. This one, I think, was a little bit more like our 1-2, a little bit more 1-2 punch, much the same as kind of the consensus, or I guess the industry there. But Jamar Chase from LSU is our 1. Devonta Smith from Alabama are 2. Rashad Bateman from Minnesota was our 3. Jalen Waddell was our 4 from Alabama, and then Rondale Moore was our 5 from Purdue. This one was a little bit like our 1-2, I think, was kind of flip-flopping a little bit. And even as I wrote down my numbers, submitted them, I still wanted to flip-flop a little bit. But Jamar Chase and Devonta Smith, I think they can't, like, 2 polar opposite players. Jamar Chase, like I have written down here, the pros, obviously the size, the power, the athletic freak. But then the cons is he has the sloppy routes and just relies on his size too much. Where then there's Devonta Smith, the polar opposite, where he has those crisp tactician-like routes, and he's a pure separator based on routes around, where Jamar Chase relies on his size to separate. Now, I mean, the elephant in the room, Devonta Smith being extremely undersized, like you can run routes as best you can, but are you going to get cut in half the first time you take a shot? Like, that's the big knock on Smith, and I think the big knock on Chase was the sloppy routes. But as I say 1-2, and then I just changed my mind. It's 2-1, and then 1-2, it's 2-1. It's hard to decide. It's truly, what do you believe in? Do you believe in the route running, or do you believe in size and athleticism? That's going to be who you're choosing at the 101 from this position as a receiver base. But I ended up going Jamar Chase 1, Devonta Smith 2. And I say that I changed my mind and I flip around a little bit. But what do you guys figure on the receiver spectrum?
So I think Jamar Chase, kind of like Gainwell, he might have did the smart thing. He took the season off. He put up just like an impossibly good year in 19 with Joe Burrow and the boys down there in Baton Rouge. 84 receptions, close to 1,800 yards and 23 touchdowns. Pardon me. For close to 1,800 yards and 20 touchdowns. Pardon. So he could have easily been one of the top 2 receivers, I think, if he was eligible for last year's draft. So instead of risking putting up a subpar year or getting hurt, made the smart decision. Thanks, but no thanks. I'll sit this one out. With that said, though, he does have 1 year of elite production, but that production was so elite. He had Justin Jefferson as wide receiver 2, who was, I would say, the best rookie wide receiver this year in the NFL.
Yeah.
So Jefferson was his second fiddle. Yeah. And he had Terrence Marshall as an relative afterthought. And Terrence Marshall should be one of the first 7 or 8 receivers off the board, I think, this year. So he was he's a man among boys, like elite deep speed. But yeah, I think he might rely on the physical side of his game a little bit more than somebody like Devonta Smith, who I think is, God, he's so fun to talk about. But Armin, do you have anything else before we go to Smith?
You know, I agree with everything you guys said about Chase. I was actually way off on consensus with you guys for number 2, actually. I did not do Devonta Smith as 2. I actually had him all the way down to 4. And it was the size. It worries me. I'm worried he might be like Deshaun Jackson, able to put up big numbers, but just injury prone, always getting injured. So it was something I really struggled to look past, because I look for big bodied receivers.
That could be a hot take
for me.
It could be a hot take in itself.
Yeah.
I don't disagree. I used to be like, oh hell yeah, give me that power forward with 4.4 speed on the boundary. That's what I want in a receiver. And then watching N'Keal Harry for 2 years, I'm like, give me that route runner with speed. Fuck, if he's 170 pounds, give it to me.
one thing I'll say about Harry though, you watch him playing for the Pats. He's not using his speed.
I know.
If you have the speed, you got to use it. So,
Yeah.
but no, the size worried me a lot for Smith. So I actually had him all the way down to 4. I also am of the mindset you can teach a guy to be a good route runner, whereas it's hard to teach. Kind of like with basketball, you can't teach size. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think with Smith, I think if your biggest knock on a guy is something off the field, you might be making a mountain out of an anthill, if you will. Like just looking at what he's put up the past couple of years, it's hard to argue that he's put up some of the best numbers out of the past 2 draft cycles. This year alone, 117 receptions, close to 1,900 yards, 23 TDs. Even after last season, he could have entered the draft and been one of the first couple receivers off the board, but he chose to come back. Looking at his weight though, like, yeah, like you're absolutely not wrong. 100 or allegedly around 170 pounds, 6'1". Armand, you and I coached receivers a little bit there at St. Mary's. We've coached grade 10s that are bigger than Smith. Like,
Yeah.
In all
like, you know what I
honesty,
mean?
yeah.
Like I think, was it 2 seasons ago, you had 3 receivers that were bigger than Smith. Like
At the high school level.
Yeah, in Prince Albert.
Compared to Alabama. Like,
exactly. But to be putting up these numbers, to put up close to 600 yards on deep passes, good for first in the nation. At 170 pounds, like, you're doing something right. He did put up a lot of like schemed production from what I read. 304 yards and 35 targets on screen passes. But the guy, he can he'll take a 1-yard gain and make it into a 15-yard gain.
Yeah.
I think he might be able to put on some weight, which might make things a little bit better. But for me, I don't think there's a better receiver that played this year. Obviously, because Jamar Chase did not play this year.
Yeah. Okay, so our consensus, last couple 3 here, we'll go through relatively quick. A couple comments. Rashad Bateman was our 3rd. I had him at 4. Jalen Waddell, 4. I had him at 5, and then I had Rondale Moore at my 3. Just kind of taking a shot in the dark there. But quick comments about these 3 fellas. Anybody that you want to take a quick swing at?
So I had Waddle at 2. He was my 2, and then Bateman was my 3. So I actually started with Waddle out, but I watched him and I started to like his game. And there was a moment where I became a Waddle truther, and it's when I saw his catch on a post route where he gets hit by a safety coming down on him. And he gets hit hard, and he still makes the catch. Like, he's jumping in the air, makes the catch, gets hit, and completes the play. And that is just, that ability to finish a play like that is really hard to come by. So that's what moved him to number 2 for me.
Cool. I really like Rashad Bateman. He broke out as a true freshman. He put up 51 receptions, 704 yards, and 6 TDs as a true freshman. As a 18 and 19-year-old, he put up those numbers in a Power 5 conference against 22 and 23-year-olds. The more I study the draft, the more I look into stuff. Breakout age is incredibly important. It's a great indicator for future success. If you can dominate guys that are older than you coming out of high school, you have a much greater chance of carrying that into the future, into the pros. Jamar Chase, he broke out as a sophomore. That's why I'm so confident that Chase will have that. One of my sleepers, it's the same story. If you can break out as a 18, 19-year-old, I will stay on your bandwagon for a lot longer than I probably should. Um, Rashad Bateman, he's a noted technician, good release. He runs sound routes. He's not an elite athlete. The 40 isn't out of this world, but
He's a big boy,
I
though.
think, yeah, I think he's somebody that, like a Keenan Allen, maybe somebody that you're not seeing on the top tens all the time. He's not in the first round or the second round of your draft, but he's somebody that you're really happy when you get Keenan Allen, because set it, forget it. He's good for 8 receptions, 90 yards.
For sure.
Yeah, I agree with you on Bateman fully.
I liked Rondale Moore, not the fact that he is just like red, like true blue, gonna have like breakout year one, but he is like, just based on his athletic measures alone, like he's an athletic freak. Like a 4.2, like keep in mind pro day 4.29 40 is insane. So even if you add on a little bit of time to that as a pro day, that's still fast. And 5'7", small little guy, but his athletic measures are just unbelievable. So I think he is kind of being slept on a little bit in the industry a little bit too. I think he's incredibly talented. I know there's a little bit of comments about maybe just his hands aren't quite there yet, but I mean, if you're running a 4.29, I'm pretty sure you can take it right in the breadbasket and pick that one up. He's just an athletic freak. So
yeah,
I think
I agree. He's more of a like football player than a receiver, I think, and that's actually a lot of the guys in this draft class. I think are more football players in like their position. Like they're just good football guys, and Rondé Moore is probably the cream of the crop of those football guys.
for sure.
I think with Rondale Moore, you're looking at a potential Percy Harvin, somebody that could have elite production, but could have the career cut short quite early on. So I think when you're drafting Moore, especially in Dynasty, you got to know that you might only have him for the first contract.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. I do think he's being slept on a little bit. He put up a outstanding season in 2018, 114 receptions, 1,200 yards, 12 TDs, like outstanding. But in the past 2 seasons, he's only played 7 games.
Yeah.
So when you're only playing half a season out of 2 seasons, it's easy to forget you.
Yeah.
And then you're totally right. The dude's a freak. His 3 cone was in the 92nd percentile, 40-yard dash in the 98th percentile, vertical jump in the 99th percentile. The guy's an athlete for sure. And then a lot like Percy Harvin, you got to be in the right fit or right team fit.
Yeah.
If you go somewhere that has some unimaginative OC, waste of a pick. But if you go somewhere with a creative OC, somewhere like San Fran, yikes.
Yeah,
watch
you can
out.
do damage there.
Tight ends, I think this is pretty straightforward. Kyle Pitts, 1. I mean, I don't think we have to really spend too much talking about him. We could do a whole podcast just talking about Kyle Pitts. He's generational. That's we'll leave it at that. He's a generational talent. But then we had Pat Fairmuth from Penn State and Bevan Jordan from Florida. You two had Pat Fairmuth at 2, and I had Bevan Jordan at 2. I mean, really, I think Pat Fairmuth has the better potential to be putting up numbers than Bevan Jordan. I just like Bevan Jordan's athleticism a little bit more than Pat Fairmuth. Pat Fairmuth, you looked at his numbers, and I think he relies on the touchdowns a lot, which, I mean, it's pretty standard, your tight end position. Like if you look at the NFL tight ends, when you're starting in your dynasty, you're starting in your redrafts, a lot of times when you scrap the tight end, you're just looking for a touchdown, and that's how you're gonna get your points. But I just like the athleticism of Bevan Jordan, even though in his pro day he didn't look fantastic, which is kind of disappointing. He is athletic, especially being as an undersized tight end.
Yeah, I agree. Like Freermuth is a bit more polished, solid blocker, great run after the catch ability as well. Makes me kind of think of Kittle when I see that, but Probably won't be that elite, but kind of that idea.
I
And
think
Jordan
he's
is just raw potential.
I think he's kind of like a nice little secondary prize. If you don't win the Kyle Pitts sweepstakes, picking up Freiermuth and a little bit later in drafts, you might be okay with that. I think everybody's kind of hot and bothered by Pitts. You might be able to sneak that Freiermuth one a little bit in the back end, maybe second and middle second, and you might be laughing on that pick too, depending on where he ends up too.
Could not agree more. I think if you're like Jordan, you said that you're hurting for a tight end potentially here in Dynasty. I think if you can't sell the farm and get Kyle Pitts, don't feel bad about getting Pat Fairmouth as your consolation prize. Nicknames Baby Gronk. This past season was cut short by injury, but 19, he put up 43 receptions, 500 yards, 7 TDs. I think he's somebody that is going to be on the field more so than like a Bevan Jordan. He's a good blocker. He can play on the line and in the slot. And the more you can do for offense, the more you'll be on the field. And you got to be on the field to put up points.
Yeah, I agree.
So I think he's somebody that has a great chance of contributing. And looking at his size, 6'5", 250, that screams red zone threat to me.
Yeah.
And like you said, a lot of times, especially when you're streaming tight ends, that TD is what you're chasing.
Yeah.
So I'll take my shot with him before I, dance with Bevan Jordan for sure.
His stock hurt a little bit with that pro day. He didn't look fantastic, but I mean, he is a little undersized. They're talking about him being out in the slot a lot more. He's not a big body. He's not going to be blocking. So he's going to be out in the slot a little bit more. So I think the comps to Bevan Jordan was very Evan Ingram-esque, but like just based off the athleticism. But yeah, sleeper picks. I guess I'll kick it off first. My sleeper pick is Dwayne Eskridge from Western Michigan. I think he's being slept on like drastically in the industry. And it's actually kind of funny when we were doing this, I was listening to some podcasts, and actually another podcast I was listening to had Dwayne Eskridge as his sleeper too. But I think I think he's incredibly talented. So 5'9", 190 pounds. So decent size, around a 4.38 40. So he's a fast, can be a burner, field stretcher, but then can be more than that. He's not just going to be limited to a field stretcher title. He's going to be able to stretch the field, but then has other tools in the tool bag to be successful. And he's going to make physical plays even bigger. Like he's a physical player. He plays bigger than his size. Even though he's 5'9", he's not tiny, but he's not monstrous either. But he plays physical and he plays bigger than his 5'9" size. So I think he's going to be a guy that's going to be slept on a little bit. And I think he's a guy that you could probably get maybe late second, that I think can be a high impact player just because his name hasn't been thrown around lots in a lot of the mock drafts in the industry. And like I said, I think he is being slept on significantly where he might be a little bit of a fantasy goldmine there just because of the name, just because his name value isn't booming like some of the rest. Zach, you had Tylan Wallace.
Yeah, I'm a big Tylan Wallace guy. He's been a guy that I've heard for the past couple of years, just watching football on Saturdays in the fall. He's another guy, a lot like Jamar Chase, a lot like Rashad Bateman. He broke out as a sophomore. So he was dominating at his level as a 19-year-old, beating dudes that were 22, 23. So this past year, he only played 9 games, but he was able to put up 59 receptions, 922 yards and 6 TDs. Nothing to scoff at there, but his sophomore season was legendary. 86 receptions, 1,500 yards, 12 TDs. He's a guy that can handle a lot of work. Past 3 years at OK State, close to 30% of his team's targets went to him. And over the past 3 years, he's led the nation with 43 contested catches. This is somebody that is coming from Oklahoma State, a school that, granted, they do spread the ball around. It's a lot like playing football with your buddies in elementary school. no handoffs. You're just throwing the ball around. But I have a lot of faith in the right situation, could be a total steal in your rookie drafts. He's somebody that you don't have to go out and get in the first round. Depending on the size of your league, towards the end of that second round would be where I'm thinking Thailand will go. Based on the size of your league, he's somebody that I'm thinking you can get at towards the back part of the second round, maybe even third round, as that 8th, 9th, or 10th receiver off the board. So Tylan Wallace, he's somebody that it's hurting me to promote him like this because I was hoping to keep him to myself.
Yeah, that's the problem we're running into some of these. Even like with your trade negotiations, we've been saying, well, guys all of a sudden are hearing who you like, and when you start telling everybody about it, they're gonna find out.
Yeah.
Armand, you want to hit us with your sleeper pick?
All right, I went Eli Mitchell from the Raging Cajuns, running back here. Okay, I have him as my RB7, right behind Michael Carter right now. I liked his contact balance watching him play, and his hands impressed me a ton as well. I think kind of Devontae Williams light, like he's not the prospect that Williams is, but I think he has that ceiling that Williams has as well. And I watched his film against Iowa State. Okay. And that is a far superior team to the team he plays for. And there's multiple times where he could have been taken down for a loss, and he got positive yards out of it. Okay, he was able to navigate through it all, get positive yards, make guys miss. Okay, and then so I was liking it. And then when his O-line finally did block for him and give him a good block, he got chunk plays out of it. He was getting chunk plays. Okay, so I was liking that film. I was enjoying it. Looking at his stats, he didn't have any like huge years, but his yards per carry is in the sixes. Okay, so he averaged, I want to say, 6.3 yards per carry, which is pretty good yards per carry. And then he's had some good receiving stats, not huge. And then what really sold me on him is I was concerned that he didn't have any home run speed. Okay, that he wasn't able to, if he made it through everything, didn't have that breakout speed to take it to the next level and turn that chunk play into a big touchdown run. But then his pro day came out, and I saw where he ranked in this year's prospects for speed, and he was third, I think, for speed, third or fourth. Okay, and in his pro day, it was in the 4.3s, which would probably translate to at the combine 4.4, right? So he has enough speed that he can make that big play. Plus, with the other things I saw from him that were really important to me as well, I was really impressed with Mitchell there.
Right on. Wrapping things up with our final segment. One of my favorites here. Some things are been hot off the press, and some things have been a little bit slower developing here. But the ice cold hot takes. As our special guest of the week here, we'll let Zach be our first hot take, and so we'll go from there. Zach, your hot take for this episode.
All righty. So I said whichever quarterback ends up at 3 with San Francisco will have the best fantasy season of any of the rookie quarterbacks and will end up winning the offensive rookie of the year. Looking at everything that San Fran has to offer, as one of those quarterbacks, that is where I want to go. San Fran has Kyle Shanahan at the helm. He is a noted offensive guru. So just by having a offensive-minded coach, you're already in a good position to succeed. Going in a little bit deeper, obviously, San Fran, their skill position, it is a-okay They got Ayuk, Samuels, and Kittle. Their top 3 targets are probably head and shoulders above the other landing spots. Jacksonville, nothing to sneeze at, but I'm taking San Fran above Jacksonville. Sorry, New York. Your guys can't touch San Fran. And when one of the rookie quarterbacks end up in New England, we can't touch San Fran either. So whoever goes to San Fran is going to have some very talented skill position guys that can get open deep, but also in the short and intermediate level of the field, which is where rookie quarterbacks are going to have to make their money. I'm not scared of Jimmy G. He's somebody that I think is a placeholder for right now. And eventually I think they're going to move on from him sooner than later. Maybe even as early as the start of the season. Ideally, to make this hot take to come true, I need Justin Fields in San Fran. But for my personal dreams and sanity, I need Fields to end up in New England. But if Fields does end up in San Fran, look for him to make plays inside and outside of the pocket and impact the game with his RPOs. In any dynasty format, I'd be hard pressed not to take Justin Fields as QB1 if he's in San Fran.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. If I'm super flex 101, I'm taking the San Francisco quarterback. I think Trey Lance, you're going to sit on him for a year, but if it's Justin Fields, it's 101. Like, I think that might be a hot take in itself, even though it's not my hot take, but I can get behind with you in the San Francisco quarterback position. I hadn't heard Zach's hot take here in full transparency. I hadn't heard it yet. So as soon as I was listening to it, I was like, "Ooh, I can get behind this one." I like that's a spicy take. Armin, do you wanna take a swing and hit us with yours?
All right. So even though I just went over with Eli Mitchell, what convinced me to make him my sleeper, I'm saying the 40 time does not matter as my hot take here. Okay. So it is a bold statement. So I'm going to amend it a little bit, right? It's a piece of the recipe that makes a great NFL player, but it is way overhyped, I think. Power is really important when it comes to running backs. Receivers, I'd say speed over power a little bit, but and then you need the hands, right? So speed can kill. It can do a lot for you. Like, look at Tyreek Hill there. But there's some guys out there that just don't have the speed and they can still produce. And there's some guys that have blazing speed that have done nothing in the NFL.
Insert John Ross.
Yeah, John Ross was the prime example.
4.29.
Yeah, so like 4.29. There's some unofficial ones here, like Don Beebe, 4.21 unofficial or before the combine. Okay, do you guys even know who he is? He's best known for chasing down a Dallas Cowboy in the Super Bowl and stripping the ball from his hands right before a touchdown, or a showboat touchdown. But that was his only big play in his career. Then there's like a bunch of other names out there. I was doing a whole bunch of research on this. Abby in Washington, J.J. Nelson, Jalen Murick, Jacob E. Ford, Champ Bailey, Marquis Goodwin, Dree Archer, Chris Johnson. He's actually got good production. And then John Ross. Those were the top 9 combined 40 times. Not many of them were actually household names. Okay. And then you look at some of the guys succeeding in nowadays NFL. Kamara ran a 4.56 40. Jacobs only ran a 4.6 40. Okay. Derrick Henry, beast he is, but he only ran a 4.54, right? Speed isn't everything. It's overhyped, I think. That's my hot take.
That's funny that we were right away. We're like both John Ross, and then he happened to be on the list. That's pretty. Like what was the scoop with his year? If you outbeat the 40, was it you got an island or something like that, or how did it work? If you had to wear specific shoes.
Yeah, it was sponsored by Nike, I think.
But he wore Adidas, right?
Yeah, and everybody was like, dude, like, what were you thinking? And he's like, man, I can't swim. What the hell do I need an island?
Yeah. Unreal. John Ross, there we go. Soundbite made it into our podcast. Unreal. Okay, so my hot take this week is my hot take for this episode is come draft season, like come dynasty rookie draft season, even redraft season, landing spot does not matter. Okay. Now, keep in mind, landing spot, if you have a guy 1A, 1B, okay, I can see a landing spot projecting him a little bit ahead of the previous guy. But your pre-draft ranking should carry the same weight as they do post-draft. They should carry a significant amount of weight. So like we did today where we had our consensus top 5, we have our top 10, those should carry just as much weight, if not more, than the post-draft. Okay? So I'm going to give you a few examples of kind of what I mean and why I mean. So look at last year in 2020, prime example, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Okay? Me and Armin had talked about this before the podcast. He was our RB5, RB6 consensus. Okay. Then Jonathan Taylor was my clear-cut 101. Swift was my 102. After that, probably Akers, maybe 103, 104. I'm trying to remember my rankings from last season, but Jonathan was my clear-cut 101. Okay. Then in the final pick of the first round, Kansas City drafts Clyde. Everybody's like, he's auto 101, auto. Well, he was my 106 running back. He wasn't even in my top 6 rookie talent. But all of a sudden, everybody's like, nope, number 1. He's number 1 off the board. And I remember last year going into our rookie draft saying to a guy in our league, he had 101, and he was asking for my advice. I said, do not take Clyde Edwards-Helaire at 101. Jonathan Taylor is leaps and bounds better, and he will eventually get the opportunity in Indianapolis. And then week 1, Clyde puts up 2 scores and 130 yards or something stupid like that. I'm like, oh boy, I had to put my put my tail between my legs, and then everything kind of came to fruition. Okay, he jumped up like 5 or 6 spots because of landing. Okay, another example from the 2020 draft season, Lamb versus Judy conversation. A lot of people had them as the 1A, 1B, or they had CD above Judy, wherever he stood. Okay. Personally, I had CD above Judy, but then Judy went to a situation where he would be the clear cut 2 prior to the ACL injury there. And then Judy kind of potentially became the 1 in Denver. And CD was probably the 3 at the time in Dallas. Now, I ended up in my draft, I had the 2 back-to-back, and I ended up drafting CD and Judy back-to-back in my rookie drafts. But I was seriously considering going Judy over CD just because of the depth charts, based on making my decision based on landing spots. Now, end of season, I'm still sitting here. Both of them didn't have the fantastic breakout season, but I'm still sitting here saying CD's the better receiver. I still think CD's better, and I'd rather have CD. But I almost went Judy because of CD because of landing spots and depth chart. Now, my last example, 2019, AJ Brown and DK Metcalf. Pre-draft, everybody was just absolutely hot and bothered by DK Metcalf. DK was potentially the 101 that year in rookie drafts. Not even number 101 receiver, 101 rookie draft. Then the draft happened, and all of a sudden, AJ Brown, DK went to offenses where they weren't going to be elite, and people were kind of sleeping on them. And then who became the number 1 that year in a lot of rookie drafts? N'Keal Harry. Well, I'm sure a lot of people are hurting a little bit there that they went N'Keal Harry instead of AJ Brown or DK Metcalf, because I just paid 3 firsts basically for AJ Brown, and I wouldn't even pay 3 fourths for N'Keal Harry. So when you go landing spot ahead of draft talent, I think you're going to get burned more times than you're going to get rewarded. Now, if it's 1A, 1B or 2A, 2B, okay, you can take landing spots into consideration because it's not making a drastic difference based on your talent and observations. But when you go from a 105 or a 106 like Clyde and jump him into the 101, you're going to get burned and you're going to be disappointed. Now, I'm not saying Clyde Edwards-Helaire is not a good running back. I'm not saying he's not going to have fantasy relevance. But what I'm saying is you're bound to be disappointed if you took Clyde Edwards-Helaire at 101, and you were chomping at the bit if you got Jonathan Taylor at the 102, and look what happened. So draft spots shouldn't matter, or sorry, draft spots. The landing spots shouldn't matter because cream is always going to rise to the top. Talent over draft landing spots. That is my hot take.
I can get on board with that. I agree.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, when we come to our rookie draft in about a month and a half time, and I'm looking at my rankings, and all of a sudden I'm putting, let's go, Trey Sermon, all of a sudden 102 because he gets a primo landing spot. I'm going to kick myself in the head because I'm going to have to come back and listen to this. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's my hot take. And as hard as that is, it's you kind of got to stick to your guns. Like the industry last year, I mean, it was also the first live thing that we could do because of COVID was watch the draft. And that was the first sports event that happened because of COVID. And all of a sudden the draft ended with the final pick being Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and the internet was just breaking. Like Twitter could have crashed because of everybody getting hot and bothered by CEH. But Jonathan Taylor, baby, on my team now. Let's go. That pretty well does it. I don't know, any final tidbits or remarks to add in there, fellas?
Just want to say thank you guys so much for having me. This was a lot of fun. Definitely excited for coming back, I guess, in 2 weeks' time, or whatever it is, to discuss the actual draft itself. And for me to convince Jordan that perhaps landing spot does matter.
Well, we'll see what happens. She was a longer one this week, guys. A few technical issues. Oh boy, this is going to be a fun one. I have a few headaches already just from freaking internet not wanting to work here. But thanks for sticking around, guys. A long one. Hopefully a lot of this information is going to carry into your leagues and help you out moving forward. But thanks for listening to episode number 4. Thank you to Zach Strong for part 1 of his feature in our episodes. And the same as always, like and follow our social media platforms at 306 FFB. Also like to throw out a little tidbit here that we'll be having a special event coming up right away leading up to the draft on our social media platforms, where we're going to be giving away some 306 merchandise. Rebellion Brewery, who was our special sponsor of the episode last week. And then we also have a few extra pieces we're throwing together. So pay attention on the social media platforms for that, as we'll have a special draw coming up on the NFL draft next Thursday. So thanks for listening, everybody. That was episode number 4, and we'll see you all in 2 weeks. Take care, everybody.